Imagine you are playing a game where the rules change while you sleep, and the banker has a hidden press in the basement. That bill in your pocket is not wealth. It is a debt instrument issued by a private entity. Today, we reveal how central banks manipulate your reality and harvest your labor through the most sophisticated illusion ever created. The concept of money is the ultimate social contract, yet very few people understand that the currency we use is actually born out of thin air. When a central bank decides to expand the money supply, they are not creating value. They are merely diluting the value of every single dollar already in existence. This is the foundation of the modern financial system, where money is printed as debt, ensuring that the total amount of debt will always be greater than the total amount of money available to pay it back. It is a mathematical trap designed to keep the entire global population in a state of perpetual work just to stay afloat. You might believe that the Federal Reserve is a government agency, but the truth is far more unsettling. It is a private entity with shareholders, operating with a level of autonomy that would make any monarch jealous. Since the year 1913, this institution has overseen the systematic devaluation of the currency, causing the dollar to lose over 95% of its original purchasing power. This is not an accident or a sign of a failing economy. It is a deliberate feature of the system. By slowly eroding your savings, they force you to take risks and keep your capital within their banking infrastructure. The year 1971 marked a pivotal moment in human history when the last ties to the gold standard were severed. Suddenly, money was no longer backed by anything tangible. It was backed only by a promise and the threat of force. This transition allowed central banks to print unlimited amounts of currency, fueling massive government spending and endless wars. Without the discipline of gold, the system became a giant experiment in psychological engineering. We were told this was for stability, but in reality, it was the moment the world entered the era of the infinite debt spiral that we see today. Fractional reserve banking is the mechanism that allows commercial banks to create money every time they issue a loan. When you borrow $100,000 for a house, that money didn't exist before you signed the contract. The bank simply typed those numbers into a screen. You, however, must spend the next 30 years of your life performing actual labor to pay back that imaginary capital plus very real interest. This is the core of the mass manipulation. They trade their digital entries for your life force and your most precious resource, which is your limited time on this planet. The invisible tax known as inflation is the most efficient way to redistribute wealth without the public ever realizing who the culprit is. While we are distracted by political theater, our ability to buy food and energy is slowly being throttled. Central banks tell us that 2% inflation is healthy, but why should it be healthy for your money to lose half its value every few decades? It is a mechanism to prevent you from ever becoming truly independent. If your money held its value, you wouldn't need to depend on the system. They need you hungry, and they need you working. Every time a new crisis emerges, the solution is always the same: print more money and lower interest rates. This cycle creates a temporary high in the markets, followed by a devastating crash that wipes out the small investors while the giants are bailed out with your tax dollars. It is a system of socialized losses and privatized gains. The psychological toll of this constant instability keeps the masses in a state of high cortisol and low-level panic. When people are afraid for their financial future, they are much easier to control, and much less likely to question the grand design of the elites. We must realize that the current monetary system is not a natural law of physics. It is a construct. It is a cage made of numbers and ledger entries. The central banks act as the architects of this cage, adjusting the bars whenever someone gets too close to escaping. By controlling the cost of money, they control the cost of everything else, including your thoughts, and your perceived freedom. They have turned the entire world into a giant laboratory where human behavior is steered by the flow of liquidity. To understand the hidden truth is to realize that you are the fuel for their machine. The ultimate goal of this expansion is to ensure that no one can ever truly own anything outright. If you have to pay property taxes and interest to a bank, you are merely a tenant on the land you think you own. The central banking system is the ultimate landlord of the planet, extracting a small piece of everything produced by human hands. It is a silent, global empire that requires no armies on the ground, because it owns the currency those armies are paid with. This is the true nature of the power we are discussing today, and it is far more reaching than most dare to imagine. The Cantillon effect is the most important economic concept you have never been taught in school. It describes the phenomenon where the people closest to the source of new money, the big banks and government contractors, get to spend it before prices rise. By the time that money reaches the average worker in the form of wages, the prices of goods have already skyrocketed. This means the elites are effectively stealing your purchasing power before you even receive your paycheck. It is a hidden transfer of wealth that happens every single day, right under our very noses, without a single shot being fired. Think about the stock market and the real estate bubbles we have seen over the last 20 years. These are not signs of a booming economy. They are signs of a debased currency. When the central bank floods the system with trillions of dollars, that money has to go somewhere. It flows into assets, pushing prices up to levels that are completely detached from reality. This makes the wealthy, who own the assets, feel richer, while the young and the poor are priced out of the dream of ownership forever. This is the creation of a permanent underclass, locked in a struggle they cannot win. The delay between the printing of money and the rise in prices is the window where the greatest thefts in history occur. Those who can borrow at low interest rates can buy up resources, land, and companies at yesterday's prices. By the time you try to buy those same things, the inflation has already kicked in. This is why the wealth gap is widening at an accelerated pace. It is not a failure of the market. It is the market working exactly as it was designed to for the people at the top of the pyramid. They get the gold, you get the bill. Did you notice your cost of living rise faster than your paycheck this year? Take a moment and drop a yes or no in the comments below. Let us see how many of us are actually feeling this invisible tax in real time. If you find this investigation valuable, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We are committed to exposing the structures that go unnoticed by the mainstream media, and your support helps us reach more people who are searching for the truth. This conversation is just getting started, and your voice is a critical part of the resistance against financial ignorance. The financialization of our world means that everything is now a derivative of the banking system. From your student loans to your car payments, every aspect of your life is a stream of income for a financial institution. They have successfully turned the basic needs of human existence into debt-bearing instruments. This ensures that the majority of your productive years are spent servicing the interest on things you should have been able to afford easily. The central bank is the maestro of this orchestra, ensuring the music never stops until they have extracted every last drop of value. When the middle class is hollowed out, the stability of society begins to crumble. We see the symptoms everywhere: rising crime, political polarization, and a general sense of hopelessness. People know something is wrong, but they can't quite put their finger on what it is. They blame their neighbors, they blame different political parties, and they blame foreign nations. They rarely look at the building with the marble columns and the high fences that controls the very supply of the money they fight over. This distraction is part of the manipulation. If we are fighting each other, we aren't fighting them. Real estate has become a speculative casino rather than a place to live. When central banks kept interest rates near zero for a decade, they forced everyone to become a gambler. If you kept your money in a savings account, you were losing. If you put it in the market, you were helping to inflate the bubble. This destroyed the concept of thrift and saving, which are the foundations of a healthy society. Instead, we were pushed into a culture of spend now, pay later, which is exactly the mindset that a debt-based system needs to survive and grow. The permanent wealth gap is not a bug, it is a feature of the fiat currency regime. As long as the money is created as debt and distributed from the top down, the rich will always have an unfair advantage. They have the information, the access, and the proximity to the press. You have your labor and your time. In a world of infinite money printing, labor will always lose to capital. To break this cycle, we must first recognize the mechanism of our own enslavement. The Cantillon effect is the mirror that reveals the true face of modern economic inequality. Central banks do not just manage money, they manage human psychology. By manipulating interest rates, they can effectively turn the greed and fear switches of the entire population on and off. When rates are low, people feel exuberant and take on massive debt to buy things they don't need. When the banks decide the party has gone too long, they raise rates, causing a contraction. This boom and bust cycle is a shearing tool. Like sheep, the public is grown during the boom, and then shorn of their assets during the bust, when they can't pay their debts. The anchoring of expectations is a powerful tool used by central bank officials during their press conferences. They use complex, coded language to signal to the markets what they should think. This creates a feedback loop where the media echoes the bank's narrative, and the public begins to believe that the current state of affairs is the only possible reality. They have successfully convinced most people that a little bit of inflation is necessary for progress. This is the ultimate gaslighting. They are telling you that the fire burning your house down is actually what is keeping you warm. Mainstream media plays a crucial role in manufacturing consent for the central bank's actions. You will notice that during periods of high inflation, the news focuses on supply chain issues, greedy corporations, or foreign conflicts. They will blame anything and everything except the massive increase in the money supply that occurred months prior. By providing a revolving door of scapegoats, they ensure that the public's anger is never directed at the source. This is a masterclass in propaganda, shielding the most powerful institutions from any real accountability or public scrutiny. Political theater is the greatest distraction of all. While we argue over cultural issues and partisan bickering, the monetary policy remains largely the same regardless of who is in office. Both sides of the aisle are dependent on the central bank to fund their promises and their deficits. The hidden truth is that the central bank is the true sovereign power, and the politicians are merely the managers of the expectations of the public. As long as the debt continues to grow, the power of the bankers remains absolute, and the circus in the capital continues to perform for our entertainment. Creating dependency on the state is a natural byproduct of a devalued currency. As people find it harder to survive on their own, they look to the government for help. The government, in turn, must borrow more money from the central bank to fund social programs, which further devalues the currency. It is a vicious circle that leads to a larger government and a smaller, more dependent citizenry. This is how a free society is slowly transformed into a managed one. Independence is the enemy of the central banker, and debt is their most effective weapon against it. The illusion of choice is what keeps people participating in the system. You can choose your bank, your credit card, and your investment portfolio, but you cannot choose to opt out of the fiat system itself without significant hardship. You are forced to use their legal tender for all debts, public and private. This forced participation is what gives the central bank its power. If people could easily choose a different medium of exchange, the monopoly would collapse. This is why they are so terrified of any alternative that they cannot control or manipulate from the shadows. Fear is the primary driver of the boom and bust cycle. During the bust, the fear of losing everything makes people willing to accept any solution, even if it means giving up more of their freedom. We saw this during the financial crisis of 2008, and we saw it again in 2020. Each time, the central bank expanded its power and its balance sheet, taking more control over the economy in the name of saving it. It is a protection racket on a global scale. They create the instability and then sell you the stability at the cost of your future. They want you to stay in debt forever, because a person in debt is a person who cannot say no. Debt is a leash that keeps you tethered to your job and the system. When you have 30 years of payments ahead of you, you are less likely to take risks, less likely to protest, and less likely to dream of a different world. The central bank's goal is a world of permanent digital serfdom, where everyone is a debtor and every move is tracked. Understanding this psychological prison is the first step to breaking the chains and reclaiming your cognitive and financial sovereignty. We are now entering the most dangerous phase of this monetary experiment, the end of physical cash. For thousands of years, cash allowed for private, anonymous transactions between individuals. It was a small pocket of freedom outside the gaze of the state. Central banks are now aggressively pushing for the elimination of paper money under the guise of convenience and fighting crime. But the true motive is total visibility. Without cash, every single thing you buy, every person you give money to, and every cent you earn will be recorded on a centralized ledger for eternity. Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, are not just a digital version of the money we have now. They are a completely different animal. Unlike the money in your commercial bank account, a CBDC is a direct liability of the central bank. This gives them the power to see your transactions in real time and, more importantly, to control them. They could implement programmable money that can only be spent at certain stores, or money that has an expiration date to stimulate the economy. This is not a conspiracy. It is a stated goal of the institutions that govern our world. Imagine a world where your ability to buy food is tied to your social credit score, or your compliance with the latest government mandate. If you attend a protest the state doesn't like, they could simply flip a digital switch and freeze your ability to pay for gas or groceries. This is the ultimate tool of mass manipulation. It removes the need for police or prisons because the system itself becomes the enforcer. When your survival depends on a digital entry that can be revoked at any moment, you are no longer a citizen. You are a subject in a digital panopticon. This transition to digital is happening faster than most people realize. If you value financial privacy and want to see more content exposing the digital cage, hit that like button right now to help this video reach more people before these systems go live. Sharing this information is a small but powerful way to throw a wrench in their plans. We have to spread awareness while we still have the open platforms to do so. The window of opportunity to resist this total surveillance state is closing, and it is up to us to sound the alarm for those who are still asleep. Programmable money also allows for targeted inflation. The central bank could decide that the velocity of money is too low and program your savings to lose 5% of their value if they aren't spent by the end of the month. This would effectively destroy the ability of the average person to build long-term wealth. You would be forced into a cycle of constant consumption, which is exactly what a failing system needs to pretend it is still growing. It is the death of the future in favor of a desperate, manipulated present. We must be vigilant. The loss of anonymity is the loss of freedom. When the state knows everything you buy, they know your health, your hobbies, your political leanings, and your relationships. This data can and will be used to nudge your behavior in desirable directions. We have already seen glimpses of this with algorithmic shadow banning and financial deplatforming. The CBDC is the final piece of the puzzle that links your digital identity to your physical survival. It is the realization of a technocratic dream that has been in the works for over a century, and it is almost here. The threat to personal autonomy cannot be overstated. We are talking about the central bank having a back door into your wallet. They claim this is to prevent money laundering and terrorism, but the history of power tells us that any tool created for safety is eventually used for control. The elites do not want a population that can operate independently of their grid. They want a predictable, trackable, and manageable workforce. The digital panopticon is the fence they are building around the global village, and the currency is the lock on the gate. The technocratic future is one where human choice is replaced by algorithmic management. In this world, the central bank isn't just a bank. It's the operating system of society. They will tell us it is for the greater good and to save the planet or ensure equity. But the result will be the same: a total concentration of power in the hands of a few unelected officials. The hidden truth is that the manipulation is reaching its final stage. The question is no longer, what are they doing? But rather, what are you going to do before the door finally closes? The first step toward breaking the psychological spell of the central bank is education. Once you understand how money is created and how inflation works, you can no longer be fooled by the narratives on the evening news. You begin to see the world as it really is, not as they want you to see it. This awareness is a form of mental armor. It allows you to make better decisions for your family and your future. The central bankers rely on your ignorance to keep the system running. When you stop being ignorant, you stop being a cog in their machine. Hard money alternatives are the traditional escape hatch from a failing fiat system. Throughout history, whenever central banks have destroyed their currency, people have turned to assets that cannot be printed out of thin air. Gold and silver have been the money of kings for 5,000 years because they require actual energy and labor to produce. In the modern era, decentralized technologies and hard digital assets are providing a new way for individuals to opt out of the central bank's monopoly. Diversifying your life away from their ledger is the ultimate act of financial rebellion. The history of resisting central banks is long and filled with struggle. Many of the founding fathers of the United States were deeply suspicious of a central bank, calling it more dangerous than a standing army. They understood that the power to issue money is the power to govern. Every few generations, the public wakes up to the scam and demands a return to honest money. We are approaching one of those historical turning points right now. The tension between the centralizers and the people who value freedom is reaching a breaking point, and the outcome will define the next century. Financial education is the most powerful weapon you have. Most people spend thousands of hours learning a trade, but not a single hour learning how money actually works. This is by design. If you understand the difference between an asset and a liability, and if you understand how debt is used to harvest your labor, you become a systemic risk to the elites. They want you to be a good consumer, not a wise investor. Take your education into your own hands. Read the history they didn't teach you and study the mechanics of the invisible world around you. Moving from debt to equity is a fundamental shift in mindset. Instead of borrowing money to buy things that lose value, focus on acquiring things that produce value or hold their worth over time. This might mean investing in skills, land, or decentralized assets that the central bank cannot easily manipulate or freeze. The goal is to build a moat around your life so that when the next manufactured crisis hits, you are not at the mercy of their bailouts or their mandates. Sovereignty starts with the things you own and the debt you do not have. The global awakening movement is growing every day. All over the world, people are starting to realize that the current path is unsustainable. We see it in the rise of alternative media, the growth of decentralized finance, and the renewed interest in self-sufficiency. This is not just about money. It's about the soul of humanity and our right to be free from the manipulation of an unelected technocracy. We are the many, and they are the few. Their only power is the illusion we have agreed to believe in. Once the illusion is broken, their power vanishes like smoke. Community and decentralization are the keys to a resilient future. By building local networks of trade and support, we reduce our dependency on the centralized grid. Whether it is supporting local farmers or using alternative currencies within a community, every step toward decentralization is a step toward freedom. We have to start thinking of ourselves as more than just consumers in a global marketplace. We are individuals with the power to create our own systems of value and exchange. The hidden truth is that we have the power to build something better. The choice ahead for humanity is clear. We can either continue down the path of total centralization and digital serfdom, or we can choose the difficult but rewarding path of sovereignty and honest money. It will not be easy, and the system will fight back with everything it has. But the truth is out, and it cannot be unlearned. You now have the information you need to start your own journey toward independence. The era of mass manipulation is ending for those who have the eyes to see. The future belongs to those who wake up first and take action. We are living through a transition period that historians will look back on as the most significant shift in human history. The hidden truth is that your labor is being harvested by a system designed to keep you on a treadmill of debt. But once you see the gears turning, you can no longer be controlled by them. The rabbit hole goes even deeper than the banking system, touching the very foundations of how we define ownership in the 21st century. To understand what happens when this system reaches its logical conclusion, and how even the concept of private property is being phased out, you need to watch our next investigation. Adam Smith's Final Warning: The End of Private Property and the New Era of Digital Serfdom. Click the video on your screen now, and I will see you there.